to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. Today I'm going to be here with Dxtr Spitz, and I'm super excited to have this conversation. Before we get started, don't forget to go to maxedoutman.com. You can check out our memberships, our courses, our challenges that we do, and all sorts of different things. Also, hit us up on social media. We're on all the platforms as Maxed Out Man or Maxed Out Man course. Dexter was raised in Prince George's County, Maryland. His curious mind led him to become a jack of all trades as a scientist, entrepreneur, musician, spoken word artist, and entrepreneur. He relocated to Chicago in 2014 after graduating from Virginia Tech, where he got his degree as a materials science engineer and met his mentor, Dr. Nikki Giovanni. He began the pursuit of his performance career as Dxtr Spitz, a witty, impactful, and energized lyricist. His motto is live life like an experiment. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control the product you become. Super cool. He explores experimental themes in his multi-sensory performances. Can't wait to hear more about that. His a cappella spoken word and keynotes have brought crowds to tears while teaching inspirational deep life lessons. He most recently launched his movement called How Men Cry, which is changing the narrative around men's relationship to vulnerability and mental health with the intention of making compassion contagious. Big, long bio, super cool. I'm super excited for you to be here. It's one of those interesting things, right? Like and I tend to be a little bit this way, which is, you either have kind of this science brainy nerd mind, or you have more of the creative side. I would not call myself a guitarist, but I play guitar. And so I tend to have and write poetry and those kind of things as I was growing up. And so I kind of tend to be that way too. But it's super interesting that you're like this materials engineer and this lyricist on the same thing. But hey, if you don't mind, would you just go through and kind of give us more of your background and how you got here and what it is that you do? And then I just want to have a conversation about men, masculinity, vulnerability, all that.
Yeah, sure. So it is funny. Part of, I think, why I kept that dual mind so active is because half of the time, even when I was going through school studying nerdy stuff, I was still writing music and lyrics right alongside of a lot of my notes. So yeah. I think, in some type of way, I kept flexing both of those sides of the brain pretty often.
Maybe that makes us have multiple personality disorder, right?
Yeah, it's like always switching gears. But yeah, a lot of what I do, today, I still do some work in STEM, although I'm looking to have the work that I'm doing with men's masculinity kind of be at the forefront of what I do. And, basically, I do a combination of speaking, where I'll mix in spoken word material, meditation and mindfulness practices, journaling, reflections. So I kind of do that for companies, programs, entities, whoever, kind of brings us in. And then on the flip side of that, I actually run a lot of men's retreats where, I'll do so locally, bringing together guys in really similar ways. We tend to go out into nature if I can get them out to go hike or something, or camp and other things. And, just kind of, I think that a lot of men's healing is going to happen within community, and it may look a little different than maybe how we've tried to pitch it out into the world. So I just try to bring guys together to just be together and to chill comfortably. And a lot of the conversations of what's going on deeper and kind of rise to the surface without having to force it too much. So I spend most of my time kind of building out things amongst releasing projects with my own art, whether that be music, spoken word and whatnot, picking up shows, all that type of stuff.
So you just do it all, right? Like that's the kind of, and that's cool to be able to have both of those sides and be able to integrate everything together. You made the point, what we normally see in the masculinity space and what men are supposed to do to heal and connect versus what you do. Can you just kind of walk through, like, what is the traditional way that we handle that? And then what kind of things are you doing differently to kind of help men in that new way?
Yeah, I think I'm like, how much time do you have? We
have all the time in the world, man. Go ahead.
Well, I'll stick to the extremes. There are a lot, but I think maybe some of the original ways that we looked at masculinity is, okay, you need to be a man, you need to fit in this particular role, in this particular box, you need to be a provider in this type of way. And, we're going to kind of force this learning into you that you always must be strong, always must be this. And I'm not even necessarily against the idea of having men become better providers, more responsible, other stuff like that. I have no problem with that. But I think it has been missing a really big piece of, okay, but how do you actually talk about what's going on internally to be in close relationship with the people that you love around you? And then I think sometimes we can go too far on the other side where it's just kind of like, okay, let's rip away all the masculinity that we have and decode this and break down this, which again, I think has utility at times to really look at some of the sub pieces of, I would say, how social conditioning has, really, really, really pushed the ideas of manhood. So what I try to do, ironically, I don't talk that much about masculinity in the actual men's retreats and work that I do. I think it's kind of like a thing of, if I say, oh, go and define God, that's going to mean something entirely different to some people or mean nothing at all to others, right? So I think even just to come in with, well, masculinity with all my ideas and my inputs kind of does it a disservice. So what I try to do is provide, guys, it's going to bother me. My hoodie string was caught in there. So what I try to do is provide just simply a space for men to feel welcome enough. And I try to provide some slowness. Like a lot of the times we do things with silence. So for instance, when we go out to hike in nature, I'll have guys hike in silence for quite a bit of time. And I'll ask pointed questions during that hike to allow us to just have that moment of peace and space to connect with what's going on internally before even trying to say, let me just force you to talk about what's going on, right? And there's a lot of healing that I think comes from nature. And then I also work to bring in components of mindfulness and movement as well, some of that being hiking or things like yoga, etc., to also, again, allow guys to connect more with the self. And then we more slowly work our way into, okay, well, let's buddy up and maybe have some conversations, or how did you respond to some of those pointed questions? Or, what are some of the ideas that maybe you came in here with of how you thought this was going to be and what's happening now? So just a lot more curiosity opposed to trying to tell people how they need to be within a space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. And I think that's interesting because it's almost like active meditation, right? Like versus sitting there, on your, with your legs crossed and all that. Because hiking, like for me personally, anytime I sit still, my brain just never shuts off. It's that way. But like sometimes if I'm doing something active, like you're describing, doing hiking, then I can be more contemplative, I think.
Yeah, totally. And that's one of the things the things I like to debunk around meditation and mindfulness in general is that you're not going to shut the mind off. It is doing its job, right? It's we're talking about hiking and stuff. Your mind is looking for the tiger in the woods. It's looking for the danger, essentially. And it's always going to be pulling itself into this busyness. And maybe somebody is super familiar with mindfulness and meditation, and they can sink right into, let me be present and see exactly how I feel. But the average individual, if we're not introduced to that, or even if we are, who's to say that somebody's in a space where that particular day, they're able to just process. So I try to break down some of the it's kind of funny. I kind of just make it a little more chill. It's not even that crazy of a concept. It's just backing off because we have so much input and so much pressure. And what I've come to find is with that approach, when people really feel safe and they have the time to be mindful and it's not forced upon them, the information flows out,
Yeah, I like that
So,
because it's, the joke I think around men is like we're not that complicated, right? Like, but so because usually it's in contrast to women, right? I've heard different people say, women have on average something like 40,000 words, that they speak in a
yeah.
given day, and men have like 4,000. It's like by the end of the day, it's not that I don't want to talk to you. I just used up all my words already. But
Fair enough. Yeah.
but the joke is that there really isn't that much going on. But I think that the reality is there is so much going on all the time that getting into that space is can be pretty difficult for us.
Absolutely. And I would say it hasn't always historically been welcomed, I think, either, to get into that space. So maybe where I think there is some hypocrisy for what we ask for from men sometimes is we want the vulnerability. We want these shows of, hey, can we talk more about our emotions? But historically and within society, it's not even always true that when those things are shown from men, that they are received welcoming. Sometimes there's punishment on the side of even expressing those things. And then and who knows, it could be biological and it could be all social. It could be whatever it is, but we're not opening up as much in our circles or in our friend groups or other things too. So we also don't flex that muscle as often for whatever reason. I'm like, at this point in the game, I'm like, I don't even care about why people are doing the things. Okay, we're doing it. So let's just figure that part out. It's like, but, so yeah, if we're just, I totally agree that there is so much going on internally that I think the approach just has to be really deliberate and kind of like subtle and then welcoming to say, maybe you don't talk about these things regularly in life or feel like you have, the space to be able to do so. So how can we kind of gently get there opposed to trying to like force it out of people?
Yeah, I like that idea of doing it gently, and because in a lot of ways, it's like, oh, well, if I'm going to go do this when I hear the words mindfulness and introspection and all that kind of stuff, it gets into that, what I call the woo woo land, it's like, it's
fair
like,
enough.
It's like next time, when do the crystals come out and all that, all that stuff, which is not bad. Like because then it makes it seem like it's not okay to actually have some of that deep introspection, necessarily.
Yeah. And part of one of the ways that I teach something as simple as mindfulness, we could even try it right here. So like raise one of your hands, like, yeah, and then bring it down. And then raise your hand again, and then bring it down. And then bring your attention to your hand.
Okay.
And now raise your hand and bring it down. What was different when I said bring your attention to your hand?
It was weightier, not heavier, but like it's really weird to even say that, but like I can feel my hand more than I did initially.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to look at meditation and mindfulness, but that's one of the things that I would say is just being more mindful and present within the moment, right? It's just that amount of attention of, oh, actually, I feel where my body is. I feel where my mind is. I feel where fill in the blank, is just a little more presently. Maybe it's with our breathing, maybe it's, just all of those things where in the busy societies that we're in, we push a lot of that to the side, so and that's part of why I don't try to put so much information out that then it becomes off-putting, because I kind of agree with you. Like so many words have so much weight to them that maybe has nothing to do with how I would intend it. So if I say, meditation, mindfulness, to one person, it means this, to one person, it means something else, to another person, it's, this is against my religion. This is against it can be anything. So I think I think language is important, but I also think it's important to understand what the main goal is, which is just trying to get people to open more comfortably. So.
Yeah, I've spent most of my life as a conservative evangelical Christian, right? So when you say meditation in some of the circles I'm in, they're like, wait, I don't meditate. That's all, I'm like, or they'll say, I don't meditate, but I pray. And I'm like, it's pretty much the same thing,
close,
right? Like,
right? Yeah.
And so that language and the weightiness around these words gets a little, it gets a little weird, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and that's part of even what I try to create as well, is in environments where one of my least favorite things about today in society is that we are if somebody disagrees or has a different opinion or viewpoint, therefore negative, therefore bad, therefore, all of these things that we'll put in place. And when I look at humanity as a whole, it's like, that's never going to get us anywhere, essentially. And we can look at where it's getting us now, especially within the United States, just how much conflict and everybody afraid to say anything, or people tearing each other down. And I'm more of the mind of like, it's all right for people to actually disagree if you provide and create a space where the opinions can still be respected and looked into. So for instance, for the groups that we create, I really try not to have too much parameter around what boxes you need to check to be able to be a part of a space. It's like kind of counter what I'm trying to create. So,
and I think that makes it more interesting, and it opens up conversations. One of the things that's super interesting about doing this podcast is I am now having conversations with men and women from across the world that I would probably not have an opportunity to have. And so I may be diametrically opposed, ideologically, politically, or whatever, in terms of like my belief system, not necessarily like I'm opposed to them, but then to be able to have a genuine conversation about a particular topic, whether it's masculinity or humanity or whatever, and have that connection that is so important. And I think that's so much of what we're missing right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it actually gets in the way of what we would want to see. Like a lot of when I'm saying I'm just kind of making the global assumption that people just want to get along, right? Maybe I believe that a little too much, but it's like, I think somewhere deep down, people want to get along with each other. But I think, there is so much in the way right now. And I don't think it's all necessarily people's fault. We're also, a lot of information is introduced to us. Like one of the things I talk about is just cell phone use. It's like we have more inputs and information put into our mind in a short amount of time than what's ever been true in human history. And I don't think we give that enough credit. Like, it's like, no, this isn't just we consume a little bit more media. This is, you are getting thousands and thousands of emotional input and manipulation. And even if you agree with the information or you don't, the volume of it is way higher than what we've ever seen. So I think by the time people get face to face again, there's all this information, and, the actual human connection part can be lacking.
Yeah, and you used a great term, which is manipulation. One of the things I've been trying really hard on lately is not touching my phone for at least the first 30 minutes of the day. Because your tendency is to wake up, get on your phone, and then you're fed. You're literally fed. You're not seeking a lot of this information. You're just being fed this information. I firmly believe that, to your point about connection, I think most people, and if you look at the political spectrum in the United States, I think most people are moderate. I think most people are not extreme. There are obviously some of those, but I think that the extreme sides of both of those is what's being curated for the purpose of, and I'm a capitalist, but from the purpose of profiteering and all of that off of that strife. Right. Yeah. And so we have to figure out a way to make those connections.
Yeah. And I would agree, because it's that is what's going to sell the most, like emotional, being able to agitate someone's state of emotion is going to sell a lot more. Like if I were to give you a headline that just said, a dog crossed the street today, you're never going to click on that. Right. Like you're not ever going to care. But if I say dog almost gets hit by a car while jumps over this and that, and a building caught on fire, you're like, what happened? How do I find out what happened? And the more, emotion, and to that point, why I bring a lot of our men's retreats into nature, or try to have folks connecting with more periods of silence, is I have a firm understanding that for them, there's a pretty high likelihood that you're going to have a lot of input within your life. So I'm trying to create a space where you can remove some of that input, even just for a while. Because that was one of the things that I've really found from doing a lot of camping and hiking and other stuff myself, was just the difference. I mean, the literal difference internally between spending 3 days in nature without a phone or being on a meditation retreat, for a week long in silence. And then you come back into the world and it's just like, oh, this is actually insane. We are bombarded with information.
Yeah, my wife has done these off-road rallies, and their navigation rallies, no electronics. And so for 10 days, they're out in the desert and the mountains and all this, doing basically 10, 12 hours a day in a vehicle. But the lack of electronics is something that they all talk about when they get back, and they turn their phone on for the first time. And just that, like, the anxiety that it creates, just having that notification after notification and text messages and all of this stuff. There was a great commercial probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I think it was like a GMC commercial, some pickup. And it literally shows the guy checking his signal like this whole time, and you're thinking, okay, well, he's trying to make sure he has signal, but then it shows that no service on the screen, and he's like, okay, this is the place where I'm going to park, to camp. So like his whole objective was to get out of service, right? And I think we discount that for sure.
Oh yeah, totally. And actually, if I can give an example too of, if you were to swap your cell phone, okay, for any other potential item. Say if we swapped it to an item that we have more of a stigma around as being a negative thing for some people. Say if it was a cigarette, right? Or if it's a bottle or some type of thing. If we interacted with that material.
You got your crack pipe. I got my personal crack pipe right here.
Like if you interacted with that as much as any other material on the planet, we would say this is an issue. What's going on? We need to do. But for whatever reason, with cell phones and social media and media, we give it a pass. And I think that's kind of part of. I don't say it as much in terms of what I lead with for the spaces that I create, but it's definitely a pretty big part of the intention behind it, is how do we create some like separation, because to the bigger point, I think it pulls us away from our humanity, from the standpoint of, like, now I might have 1,000 opinions about you before ever even interacting with you in like any type of way, and opposed to just, hey, actually go to shake your hand and say hello and have some conversation. So, and
look me in the eye, right? Like having that interaction that you don't get. And the irony does not escape me that you and I both do not have to reach in order to get our phones in our hands right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that is arm's reach a lot of the time. Yeah.
And so not having, like, it just consumes. And honestly, so they've done these studies. One of the reasons I've been trying not to stay I'm not getting on my phone first thing in the morning. I kind of have the morning routine that I do. And but the phone has always been a part of that. And they've done these studies about cortisol levels. And they actually can show that first thing in the morning, if you get on your phone, it actually jacks up your cortisol level, which is your stress hormone. And that's not good. Like so you're already stressed out before you get out of bed.
Yeah, I can believe it. And I'll tell you what I actually do. The first part of my evening routine for the next day is I literally power my phone off and I take it and I go and I walk it and put it in my bathroom in a little treasure chest. And it doesn't come back on until my morning, routine or process is set in place. But that's taken a long time to get to the point of realizing the necessity for it. And there is a drastic difference. I can tell you there's a drastic difference between days when I stick to that and days when I don't. I can feel it, for sure. So
yeah, that first couple of weeks, you're like a crack addict. Just you're laying in your bed at 11 o'clock at night, shaking, wondering where your phone. Phone is probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty intense, but it's wild to see how much influence it has had without, really, because I think it's hard to see that input with or the impact without the space from it,
Yeah, I mean, if you take anything away from this episode, like I think I'm actually going to try that tonight. Like that's and again, I may have a heart attack between tonight and tomorrow morning, but because my whole world, my whole business runs on this thing. And so, but you have to realize that at the end of the day, first of all, do you really need to be on email at that time of night, which you're usually not. You're freaking doom scrolling through TikTok and all of those things. And so, that's definitely something that I want to try for sure. When you do these retreats, and you mentioned kind of giving these guys pointed questions. I like to be pretty practical on this podcast if we can, and when the opportunity arises. What kind of questions can guys do? What kind of questions should they be asking themselves? And if you don't have the opportunity to be out in nature, take a walk outside, even getting on a treadmill. I live in Montana, you're in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
So like wintertime, it's hard to get outside sometimes, just having that quiet time. But what kind of questions should we be looking at asking ourselves and kind of contemplating?
Sure. I think one really great question to ask that I tend to open with is, who are you without giving your job title?
Yep.
So that one for sure is powerful. I'm not going to give away too many because you guys got to come to them. So, but no,
don't give away all your secrets for sure.
Yeah, no, but other ones, a lot of the times I will ask. For one of the last retreats we did, I was looking at the idea of what is it like to really essentially be okay with our lives where they are, no matter where you are. And one of the questions that I'll ask is, what is really lacking from your life in this moment? And then a flip side to that question is, what is it like when I get everything that I feel like I need?
Mm-hmm.
And then a question to tack on the end of that would be, who am I when I feel like I got everything that I need? And that kind of chain of questioning, the reason why I would go with it is because oftentimes we're operating from a position of lack in some way. I just need to get this one thing and then my happiness will start. Yeah. Or I need to go, figure out whatever it is and then my happiness, or I get this bank account balance and my happiness will start, and I think if we can kind of look in the future a bit, or just in the hypothetical space of what do I feel like I really need and say I got it. I mean, we see it all the time. I think it was Jim Carrey who said something like, I hope that you get every single thing that you think that you need, just so that once you get it, you realize that it's not it.
Yeah.
And I think for men in particular to bring it into a lot of the narratives that we have, a lot of the times our value is tied to what we produce within the world. And I think that can create a difficult mentality of I never have enough, or I've never achieved enough to actually be internally valuable. And that's what we're trying to flip on its head.
Yeah, I really like that. I talk about if money is your main objective, like when I do a lot of business counseling and business coaching and all that. And I always talk about what's your main goal? Well, to make a bunch of money. I'm like, well, if that's your goal, you will literally never make enough. Like that's, because there's always going to be, and, I think as humans, as men, especially, it's like, it's that once I statement. It's like, once I make this sale, once I pay off this debt, once I get, make $1 million a year, whatever those are, then I'll be happy. Yeah. And it's just not true. Like you're just never, and I mean, I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else, but it's finding that contentment in your situation that is probably one of the more difficult things to have.
Yeah. And I think it's hard. I mean, that's why I have mixed feelings, even like business wise and otherwise. I'm okay and enjoy making money or having like what I need to support. But then at the end of the day, there is the reality that, I mean, it sounds cliche, but you do not leave with it. You know, it's like,
Yeah, well, they
it's
say you
nothing you're going.
never seen a hearse with a U-Haul behind it.
I mean, seriously, it's like it's nothing you're going to do. And I think another question to ask actually that's come to mind, and this is one that's come about from being within a meditation community is this going to matter on my deathbed? Is this really going to matter on my deathbed? And it's a sobering question, but we can get into a space of this is going to be a far away time from now. This is going to be some hypothetical moment. We don't really know that. You know,
Right.
It can be today.
Could be tomorrow.
For any of us.
Yeah, today or whatever.
It can be tomorrow. Right? It's not, you know, there is not and it can get really easy in the fast pace of life to say, it'll be when this thing happens, or, you know, I'll spend more time with the kids as soon as I have fill in the blank, or as soon as this is done and that's done. And it's like, that may not ever be true. You know, it's like, so finding that balance around how you want to really spend your time and energy. And I'm not saying this as well as if I have mastered a whole lot of this stuff. Like, I can just as easily, you know, scroll and BS and waste time and whatnot. But it's definitely helped in more recent time to be able to ask those questions, you know, a little more directly to myself, to say, okay, what am I really doing here? You know?
Yeah. The challenge, I think, is like, then does anything really matter? Right? Like, then how do you balance between like, I'm just going to go sit in the corner for the rest of the day, you know, but it's funny that you bring that up. I made this statement the other day, and we're in a spot with a couple of my businesses to where I'm like, I'm just almost there, right? To achieving some specific goals. And I said something to my wife, like, I feel like that I should be there already. And and I made the statement, I said, I feel like I should be more successful. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about in terms of success? We've been married for 28 years. I have great kids. We have a great home. We have material blessings also. And I was like, you're right. Like, I need to put that caveat to say, okay, I'm talking about this one slice of the success, you know, thing. And I have a sign behind me that says, you know, success redefined, which is how you define success in a holistic manner. And so that's a super difficult kind of thing to navigate.
Yeah, and that's where I would say for sure, and a lot of the time, just the conversations around masculinity in particular, I think it's what can be challenging, because I know for sure for me in a bunch of ways, the idea of success was going to be measured, whether it's by, you know, number in bank account, position, title, other things like that, which is why I kind of said that initial question of who are you without your job title? Because a lot of times if you go and ask men, sometimes I'll say, oh, well, who are you? And it's like, well, I work for so-and-so, or I do this, or I do that. It is the easy way to kind of quantify things, but it's like, that really doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. You know, it's like, it really doesn't mean anything. And I do agree, if you go to the too far extremes, right, you can just say nothing matters and I just lay down in the ground. So I don't think it has to go to that extreme, but for sure being more deliberate around, okay, have I gotten to whatever point? And if there's this really crucial period, if it is more time spent, if it is more presence within our day, if it's being more present in somebody's time in need, to say, okay, can I put this to the side or delegate, or really take some thoughtful time to be here in the way that I need to be? Can I prioritize that? Because one of the other statements is, who is sitting around on their deathbed saying, oh, really wish I sent more of those emails. I just, wish I'd spent more time at work, right? Like, wish I spent more time at work. It's, you know, but it's a hard reality to see, because society wise, we also push our sick and our dying and our whomever else to the side. and we try to, prioritize the, I don't know, stuff that has a lot of glitter. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, the shiny objects. Yeah, and I mean, and to your point, being deliberate about those that are in your life and how you see success with that. I was thinking, and I've used this example a couple of times in different circles, but where I'm sitting right now is kind of my quote unquote little studio, which is basically just a table, my lights, and my backdrop. But to my right is my actual desk where I work, and my chair faces the corner of my office, and I have 2 chairs behind me that my wife comes in to sit whenever she wants to talk to me. I've worked from my house for 25 years.
Sure.
So I have to be intentional to turn that chair around to have the conversation with her versus, all right, I'm talking to you, but I'm looking at my computer. So to have that intentionality really makes a huge difference for me and for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, I feel like I've just gotten on a whole soapbox about us being connected into devices.
I mean, that's what we're here. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's part of what has been lost in human connection sometimes. Like, I've been reading a lot of books on relationship, and even just some of the science behind about how we relate and connect with people and some of these things. And it's kind of amazing that we have some of the most connected society that's ever happened and some of the loneliest people. It's something isn't in balance here. And I feel it's going to be interesting to watch some of the future generations in close relationship where we've almost, like, I'm still at the age where I remember a time of not having internet and then having internet.
Yeah. Me too.
And that's kind of, that's kind of gone. And I've seen, even just with some youth in general, where it's like you're hanging out with 10 of your friends and everybody's just like this. And it's just like, you're not even hanging out with each other. So when I think about that applied to close relationship, right? So even for anything within like relationship now and my, dating circumstance and stuff, the phone is always away from me. Like, it's a major thing. I'll cap work at a certain point and that's it. It's not out, at dinner. It's not out when we're watching TV. All that. It's done. So
I saw a picture this morning again on social media, but I saw this thing where it shows this restaurant actually has a little lockbox at the tables. And if you put your phones in there and give your key to the waiter or waitress has the key, and you get like 10% off your bill. If you're willing to put all your phones in that, you get 10% off your bill, which I think, and I almost think connected is the wrong word when we're talking about today's connectivity. There's those movies like Stand By Me and Sandlot and all those movies that were, back in the 50s and 60s. Like, that was my childhood. I'm 51. I grew up in a time where we literally left at daylight and we didn't come back till it was dark. That was the rule. You had to be back before it was dark. But that we were just connected all day long doing stuff like that. And now it's like, well, I have my gaming people that I'm connected with. Like, they got the headset on and they're doing their online gaming and all that, which is fine. I mean, it's kind of a fantasy world, but you put those people in real life, they don't have any idea to have an actual conversation with someone.
Yeah, it's true. And part of what I try to do is, even outside of retreats, I try to just invite guys to go do things. So sometimes it's as simple as, hey, I'm going to be going for a walk at this time. I invite them to go to the arcade. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story because it's sitting right here. I invited a set of guys out to go to an arcade just to come hang out, to talk. It wasn't a retreat. It's guys who have been to previous retreats and other stuff. So I think I'm doing something positive, because I am doing something positive, and I go buy all of these tokens, okay, thinking we're going to have a game night. We're going to play all these arcade games, whatever else. I still have a whole, so many tokens, because what they did was they got there, played maybe 2 or 3 games, and then everybody just talked about their life and started talking about what's going on and hanging out. And I'm literally the only one that's like, does anybody want to play? in the arcade game because they're all just talking about their life and catching up and doing this. And I'm like, I guess great, this is the point. But I think that there is a little bit of yearning for that community that we've almost lost. And through the digital age, we feel like we can catch up with ourselves, but it really is just not the same as going to go, connect choicefully with people that you enjoy. So I still got to go use those tokens.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is I think you probably got enough now for like 10 more of those events,
I mean, I was like, I had I literally had cups. I gave some away. It was somebody's birthday and I gave away like handfuls of them because I was like, well,
I mean, dude, it sounds like you're doing the right thing there for sure. So I ask this question a lot to people to men around this conversation. What advice can we give for guys that don't currently have any resource, don't know of or aren't taking advantage of these resources to have this type of connection with other men?
Yeah. So one really important thing that I would say, if you have no other tools and feel even at a standstill, maybe for creating community, journaling, that's one thing that I like to throw out there because it's a good process of getting things out, whether you realize it or not. And you'd be surprised if you free write for some time about just whatever is going on. You don't have to pick a theme, anything, just giving yourself a moment to do that. And then reading back some of that info, I think can be really powerful. And if you feel comfortable enough, if there is a partner or a significant other or a friend to connect with, working on maybe sharing some of those inputs or insights. It doesn't have to be you reading directly from it, but just getting in the practice of connecting more with the self and also being able to share that info with others. Another thing I would say, there are apps and things that are coming around like BetterHelp. NAMI is another group. I'm going to forget it, but MI is like a national group that also has a bunch of resources for helping to find like therapists or other groups. And then there are men's groups out there, maybe few and far between. I'm not always the biggest fan of them sometimes. But what I would say is if it's hard to find the spaces in your potential local area, the best advice that I was given around it was just begin to lead. And that leadership can be as simple as if you know one person or one guy or one whatever, you want to go get coffee, you want to go for a walk, and just let it happen naturally. It doesn't have to be I'm going to assemble this whole team, because I think that's part of it. It's like, I don't have this major friend group. I don't have this. I don't have really, really, really simple types of efforts. And what I would say, I guess maybe to add on the end of that is, if there's really a point of struggle for a lot of men, I think it can be harder for us to sometimes admit that we're really struggling with something. And if there is a bigger point of struggle where you find yourself, I'll give some indicators of what I would say can be struggle that present for men sometimes. If you find yourself numbing a lot through substances or, devices or whatever it is, if you find a lot of numbing, if maybe you find that point of like, I'm feeling like one more thing happens and I just want to explode, or just I have no more energy to listen to this. I don't want to hear anybody, kind of getting to those points. And then another one is, I would say, consistent outlooks of life will never be any better, or like I'm stuck. All those types of feelings, I think, can manifest within us more so than what we would maybe like to say. And if that is going on, that I would say would be the point to try to go and to find and to seek, help. And if it's to a point of like self-harm or anything where, you're really feeling deeply impacted, there's the national hotline that just went live, as well as resources like NAMI and other things. But the main thing is, the struggle point is okay. It's okay that, we get to these points. frustration or depression or sadness, and it doesn't have to be something that you deal with alone. That's the best way I could say it. So.
I love that. Yeah, because we have what is more traditional strength, right? But the point that I think what we're all working for in this space is teaching men that strength also comes in the asking for help, and really being self-aware enough to kind of like, all right, if I need to reach out to someone, being strong to the point where it literally kills you is not being strong. Like that's just being dumb in some ways, right? Like, and stubborn. That's not strength. That's stubbornness. Yeah. And so I like that. I like that you went through that list of things in order to do, for sure.
Yeah, because and hopefully it's not too much, too little. Just trying to provide outlets of just normalizing that those feelings are not that it's not alone, and that also there is a lot of social pressure to have to perform in certain ways, I think. And that is what I think is tricky about us actually wanting to ask for help or for vulnerability, even if it's not what the direct experience is now. You might have previous experiences that have said, okay, me being vulnerable. I can definitely say that I am also of the era of kids being bullied and that being a normal, I'm sure it still happens in life, but I mean, whatever amount of years ago, there weren't campaigns necessarily against bullying. It was, right. So I definitely have lived through moments of, hey, this show of vulnerability, equates to physical violence, equates to, whatever it may be. So even if that's not what's happening now, it's possible that wounding still is like influencing us in this moment to say, why do I not feel comfortable asking for help or showing vulnerability? So.
Yeah. And that's where that continuum between men's groups, events, retreats, coaching, and counseling, right? And like online counseling and then in-person counseling, that continuum exists because we all exist on a different part of that. And I think we all move to different places on that continuum too. I know for me personally and within my marriage, it's like, well, most of the time in our marriage, for example, we've been on like, hey, we just need a little tune up. We'll go to this event. We'll have a good time, to where it's like, we don't know what the hell to do with the rest of our lives after our kids left. What do we do? We need, this is like a minor crisis that we need to fix. And so I think that being on that continuum and really recognize that is super helpful.
Yeah. And I like that you pointed that out too, because I think one of the other things we can do is to try to apply a one shoe fits all. And I don't think that that's the most effective. For instance, talk therapy may be great for some in some moments or some stages. It also may not be the best thing at one immediate point. Maybe it's the best thing in the future time, or maybe there's some body awareness that has to come about first. Maybe somebody needs to go find more hobbies himself, and whatever it may be, it's like you have to find the thing that does actually work for you. And what I would want to say in that space is we sometimes talk about men and we talk at men. We don't really talk to them. And I think, that is a bit of the issue, is this thought of, I don't like the statement of, well, just go find a therapist. It's like, that doesn't really mean anything for folks if they don't have the lived experience. And then also if they're not, if that pathway doesn't even seem like readily available. And that's a lot of what we try to do, is act as this bridge between, okay, I want to go find some help or some resources, and figuring out ways to say, well, these are some of the pathways that you can have. And then also it can look like this. It can look like, being in nature for some time. It can look like journaling. It can look like finding ways to meditate. It can look like, being in a community of guys that are in similar spaces. Doesn't have to look one way. So.
I love that. So it's a good segue, but how would, if men want to connect with you guys and actually, I travel all the time to different events and stuff. So if they want to get more resources from you, learn more about what you're doing, how would they find that?
Yeah, so you can go to howmencry.com. So HOWMENCRY.com. We're actually in the process of revamping the site. Hopefully it'll be done by by the time this goes live. But yeah, we're putting up more structure for the retreats, and I'm doing them mostly local to Chicago now, but I'm actually working on doing travel ones. I got my eyes on Costa Rica and a few other places. So if you're interested in trying to get out somewhere cool too, that's on the runway for us. And then my artist profile is also Dxtr Spitz, so that's Dxtr _ Spitz, or you just type in Dexter Spitz, that'll pop up pretty much anywhere. And I keep a list of guys, like even within my phone, that I just check up on here and there. So I'm pretty easy to just say hey to. I don't like it's just say hello, and we can figure it out from there, you know.
That's awesome. Well, we're also looking at Costa Rica, so that's pretty funny that nice. that you say that. And open invite for your group for, you know, I happen to live at 4,500 feet in the mountains of Montana.
Nice.
So, you know, so if you ever want to stay in the States, let me know for sure. But hey, man, thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your experience and sharing this advice and wisdom with men. And I appreciate you. We'll be looking and keeping in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate the question and the convo. And keep doing what you're doing too.
All right. Thanks, brother.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.